Well, folks, thanks for joining us again today, the start of another week. It's going to be a wild week, a lot of stuff coming up. Some of the things that you're going to hear today will actually give you some sneak previews into what are some of the items coming up this week. Some items, as we're continuing to hear from people who are listening and watching, I appreciate the feedback I'm getting, people telling me that I'm bringing up items and issues which give them not just insight, but actually which other people sometimes are not really focused on. So gives them a little bit of a lead off there in terms of discussions at the office or at work or at school. Thanks for continuing to support Stockwell Day-to-Day News. The COP30 event, that's the big climate event that's been taking place down in Brazil, and it's wrapping up. As you know, it's wrapped up. Some of the things that I want to just touch on here, if anybody was thinking there's going to be a moderation from the extremist environmentalist point of view, that's from the Greta Thunbergs of the world and the far left-leaning movements in various countries that want to see sort of a mass control by centralized governments. And in spite of the fact that even some leaders who were previously concerned and saying, environmental damage is extreme and the world's going to end in no time at all. Even in spite of that, the messages coming out of COP30 are as strong and as strident and many as unscientific as ever. So watch for new phrases coming into the media vocabulary, things like intergenerational equity. Remember that one, intergenerational equity. That basically means one generation is going to be forced to start paying for the other generation. Watch for things like younger generations, Gen Z, saying, well, grandma and grandpa, their cars polluted the world, so they owe me money. And watch for that continue. One of the things that's driving the whole environmental so-called movement, say, of the last 30 or 40 years, and all of us want to be conscious and should be of doing what we can to have a clean environment, of course, and we're seeing improvements in that every day. But part of it, since so much of the environmental group and the Paris Accords and the Copenhagen Accords, driven by significantly less left-leaning international figures who want to see a, quote, redistribution of the wealth. So it's targeting countries that have learned how to work hard through their difficulties, how to allow people to get ahead, how to have governments and economies that are relatively strong. So watch for the ongoing transfer. What came out of previous documents was the so-called developed world, or the world that believes in things like merit and hard work and progress for everybody. That world, that would be US, that would be Canada and other countries in Europe. They used to say that's $100 billion that we need to pay into this kind of environmental initiative fund. They've upped that now. It's $1.3 trillion they want from hardworking taxpayers going to other jurisdictions. So keep a little bit of an eye on some of that new vocabulary coming out, the new lexicon that we're going to be bombarded with daily from mainstream media. And talking about a lot of money, the gun buyback program that's launched by the federal Liberals in Canada, and here's for other countries watching this type of thing, the latest price tag on this is $756 million. I always get a kick out of how they're able to so precisely predict something. 756 million, not 755 million, not 757. My prediction is it's going to be $1 billion at least. And what is it? Well, it's a government requirement that's coming up. You'll have to be fully bought back or handed in by October of 2026. And it's on the so-called assault rifles, anything that has the stock of the gun, the part that the rifle that goes up, nestles under your shoulder so you can take aim. Many designs are done in such a way that is made to be lightweight, so that hunters who are going through the woods or trekking across rivers or whatever it might be, streams, manufacturers have developed ways where it doesn't have to be, the stock of the gun does not have to be solid wood or even solid metal, but it's just a frame. You've seen it in pictures, it's just a frame. It makes it much lighter, easier to handle. And those, because they look like what people see in the movies, like assault weapons, these are called assault-style weapons, and that's going to cover hundreds and hundreds of different makes of guns and thousands of guns, thousands which have never been used or so rarely it's almost, you can't even count it, in crimes of murder, very rarely used. But all those you're going to have to either sell to the government at, believe me, a very low price, or you're going to have to hand it in by October 26, or you will be going to jail. Now, interesting that focus, there's almost zero being said about the true death rate and criminal rate, which is handguns, and principally in major cities like Toronto. Toronto leads the country in firearm deaths, and yet it appears that very little, if anything, is being done to combat that. The federal Liberals, because of their own philosophy, they refuse to put serious violent criminals in jail. People who are caught using firearms, especially in Toronto, but basically across the country, if it's a handgun in a violent crime, drugs, carjacking, breaking into homes, gang fights, whatever it might be, it's a turnstile at the courtroom. If bail is even required, it's instantly lowered. People get out right away. So the very people and group and types of weapons that are causing most deaths by firearms are not being addressed at all. Again, it goes back to hunters and sports shooters principally, which are more located, they're located everywhere in the country, but more in Western Canada. And even tough-minded political observers are saying that this so-called assault weapon ban is being aimed at in the province of Quebec, because the media there are so extremely to the left on every issue. Their population is mesmerized by the falsity that somehow people are running around with these assault weapons, murdering in great numbers, and they're not. But the Liberals need to preserve their vote in Quebec, so they're trying to look like the tough guys here. And if they really wanted to help the people of Quebec, they would do something about the criminals in Montreal and the criminals in Toronto. So that's what's happening on the gun buyback program, and it's going ahead full steam, even though Nova Scotia just tried a pilot on this. And you might want to recheck the numbers, but with untold numbers of those guns registered, a grand total of 22 firearms were turned in, 22 at the cost of millions. This is going to be over $1 billion. It is not going to reduce crime. Keep voting Liberal, you keep getting programs like this. On the front of challenges and debate within Canada, in British Columbia, Premier Eby is still holding fast to saying they're going to maintain a so-called tanker ban on the West Coast. Now, it's not a complete ban, because he does allow vessels carrying up to 12,500 metric tons of fuel to go up and down the coast. And this has been an accident-free coast for decades. And yet he is saying, no, there's going to be no tankers. There's a ban on tankers that are moving even liquid natural gas. And that, of course, is in conflict to what Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba and the federal government have been talking about. I would say there's been a progression of insight and mature looking at this, and there's an increased awareness that Canada's liquid natural gas, Canada's refined oil products can be shipped around the world, as we said before on the show, and can help to lower emissions globally in a radical way. Our liquid natural gas, our refined oil products sold, to China or India can drastically get them off of burning oil and dung. Our natural gas, liquid natural gas, our refined oil products could drastically reduce some of this, and we need another pipeline do this, to ship for the increased demand that is here right now and is going to come. Premier Eby keeps talking about a publicly financed one that's in place. Well, it is in place. It's almost fully subscribed right now. We've got to be moving more product, and Premier Eby is defying many First Nation groups who want to see another pipeline. He's leaning towards the ones who are saying, no, nothing at all. We want no development. We want no more energy. And so he is playing to that group and to the extreme leftist environmentalist. And incidentally, there's one of the gentlemen who is running for the leader of the Socialist Party nationally, the NDP, a guy by the name of Avi Lewis. Many people will know him and his father. Met with his father years ago a number of times. Fine gentleman, even though he's completely offside on his views of economics. But he's saying that, as a matter of fact, all fossil fuels, everything should just be shut in all the time. We shouldn't have any more of it. So an extremely prehistoric view being taken by Avi Lewis there. He's okay with the rest of the world starving and lacking energy and being taxed to death for energy sources that just don't work. And anyway, he has an ally in Premier Eby of British Columbia, but Premier Eby is going to find with his NDP colleague, he's going to run into trouble because Premier Eby, on the one hand, doesn't want to see increase in the size of the tankers. That's really what it is, an increase in the size of the tankers, but he's going full steam ahead with all kinds of mining projects, including open mining projects. So clearly just basing his position on a certain portion of the youth vote and the severely leftist vote, and hurting the province, hurting Canada, even depriving First Nations of much needed economic health in the process. Let's watch how that goes, talking about these climate issues. Prime Minister Carney in South Africa for the G20. You start to run out of G's after a while. We had the G7. We used to be the G8 till they kicked Russia out. Now we got the G20. I remember my friend and former colleague and adversary, Jean Chrétien, it was reported of him that he said when he was asked what the G8 or G7 stand for, he says, well, these countries get together and look at all the problems and they go, gee, we got a lot of big problems. Not sure if he ever actually said that, but it's been attributed to him. But what we're running into there with our Prime Minister in South Africa, interesting situation in the many African countries in general. Those countries, when they achieve their much needed independence, which bodes well for any country to be independent and not under some globalist heavy thumb or heavy boot print. What happened was you look from one African country to another, and many of these countries, they got their new leaders. They tended to be people of the left. Most of them went off to schools like Oxbridge and Cambridge, and they learned all the severely leftist dogma about economics, came back to their poor countries and put in place economic systems, very socialistic, which are absolutely guaranteed to keep people in poverty. And that's one of the reasons. There's others that so many African nations struggle with this, with their economics and continue to need help, is because they've embraced 100% policies that are guaranteed to maintain poverty, and those are socialist policies. I had the honor and the opportunity when I was Minister of Finance in Alberta. Our officials worked with officials in one of the provinces in South Africa at the request of an international group, and we helped them set up a Department of Finance. They did a fantastic job. They came over, their officials came over to Alberta. We went over there. I met with their premier at the time, and they really did a great job. But when I was there, I said to their Minister of Finance, a young guy, a smart guy, passionate about what they needed to be doing. And I noticed and I said, you know, you've got really intense crime problems on your streets here. The crime levels in that particular country, the carjackings and everything else were just horrific, and it was discouraging investment, much needed investment. And I said to him, look, I'm not telling you how to do things by any means, but if you don't get crime under control, you won't get the investment that you need. And his response to me was very poignant. He said that he had actually spent time as a young man with Nelson Mandela in prison, and he just didn't have the heart to put any of his brothers in prison. even if they were killing others of his brothers. So real problem there, the crime problem in many African countries, not all, and their enslavement to socialist policies that create poverty. Big problems there. We hope South Africa and other African nations can see their way through those. In terms of how economic health is doing, Secretary Bessent in the U.S. has just come out saying he's looked at the numbers with a prediction that there will not be a recession. They are not headed to recession in the U.S. Now, I guess we'll see if that's true. That will help somewhat too. You'll notice with the cultural media, the mainstream media, always looking to attack any government, it's not just Trump, any government that really believes in small c conservative principles. And so what you've noticed that definitely over the last year, more than at any time, it's the 24/7 drumbeat of the economy is crashing. Everything is terrible. You can't buy anything. I'm not even going to get into all of the elements of that debate, but it's just nonstop, and it affects the undecided when they go to the polls and they say, how's the economy going? And the undecided will largely say, well, it must be going terribly, so I can't support Trump's economic policies because the media tells me everything's terrible. Look, there's a lot of challenges in the economy. There's no question about that. Affordability has got to be dealt with. And if this is accurate, what Secretary Bessent has said, that there will not be a recession, that will help people in terms of their optimism and encourage them to keep on working, keep on studying, keep on improving what they've got. I was in Washington, D.C. just this last week, and I can tell you the delegates, the representatives of Congress that I was able to meet with, including people like Majority Whip of the Republican Party and others. Very friendly, good meetings, strong meetings. They listened carefully to the concerns that I had to share as far as Canada and as far as what we think the tariffs are doing. So received a good response there. And actually, I've been across the border now just in the last few months a few times, and I don't know, I keep reading about people having bad experiences at the borders. It's always been welcoming. When I just crossed the border recently coming in, they asked me how long I was going to be in the U.S. I said I really wasn't sure. No problem. They know that Canadian jurisdiction allows for 6 months anyway, as they do in the U.S. And the other thing, wherever you travel in the U.S., people are friendly. I say you're from Canada, people are friendly. And it doesn't matter what race or background, we've just received favorable, positive, warm treatment everywhere we go. So we're not among the groups that say because we don't like Trump's policies, we're going to send our travel money to places like Cuba and Mexico. We're not in that bunch. I don't have anything against the people of the U.S. Some of the U.S. policies I like, some I don't, and life goes on. But for us, things are friendly and open in the U.S. I feel badly for others who haven't had that experience. Ukraine has been given a 28-point peace plan. They're going to have to respond by Thursday or else it's off the table. There's a lot of concern about it on all sides. But I want to give you a little sneak preview into something else. And if you raise this subject, you'll certainly be in the know because most people aren't talking about it. There's another little flare-up point brewing, and it's in what's called the Balkans in Europe. And those of you old enough to remember when Yugoslavia was divided up into different countries, and that would include Croatia and Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina. There was war and civil war, and then during President Clinton's time, Clinton started some pretty heavy-duty bombing in that region and kind of bombed people into accepting a peace agreement, which sort of held, the Dayton Accords is what they were called, and actually held relative peace, but it's always been shaky. And now there's been an election of, there's a person who's been a president in one of those countries before, and he's there now and representing the Serbian portion of that extremely volatile population mix. His name is Milorad Dodik, and he is very clearly stating he and his country, Serbian related, is going to be strongly allied with Russia. That's Putin. And as we know with President Putin, anytime he sees a possible crack in the army of unified countries, whether it be in the EU or wherever it might be, he will exploit it. So I'm hoping that region, Serbia, Bosnia, I'm hoping it doesn't explode again or come apart, but keep one eye on it with this now Russia-friendly president there. In terms of people who really have the ability to stir up problems, the new mayor, Mamdani in New York, was asked about some pretty disturbing stuff over the weekend where huge crowds of protesters, Hamas-supporting protesters, were actually surrounded a synagogue, blocked people from going in, and were chanting from New York to Gaza, Palestine will be free. It used to be just from the river to the sea, referring to the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. Palestine will be free. That means Israel will be eliminated. That's what that means. So this group has clearly taken the Intifada to the United States. And when they are chanting, now the conflict zone is from New York to Gaza, pretty ominous stuff. There's all kinds of unbalanced people, most of them actually in the Hamas supporting unit, that will take extreme measures now. That's what we're concerned about. So the newly elected mayor, Mamdani, was asked about this, and his response was pretty weak. He said, well, people shouldn't be obstructed when they go to worship, but it does appear that the synagogue is maybe violating international law by some of the things they're saying. That is a horrific statement. The newly elected mayor, a self-avowed communist, hardcore, self-avowed supporter of the Intifada, he's very clear about that, actually trying to blame this riotous attack on the synagogue, on the Jews, of course, and on the synagogue, everything being blamed on the Jews, and he's citing international law. New York is not subject to international law, nor is the United States. So just signs of the type of mayor that Mamdani is going to be. On the culture front, those of you who are convinced that we need more young people involved in government and in politics, here's some good news for you. A young gentleman by the name of Dean Roy is running for governor of Vermont. He's running with an independent party. He's 14 years old. Vermont is maybe the only state that doesn't have an age restriction in terms of how old or young you can be to run. So he's running for it, and he's getting a lot of attention. He's 14 years old. Listen, I encourage young people to get involved. And this is going to be interesting. Now, his party is called the Freedom and Unity Party. I'm being delicate with any language here. That does mean, if you're wanting to abbreviate, the Freedom Unity Party would be the FU party. I don't know if he intended that or not, but it's going to be used for sure. Is he going to get elected? Well, the incumbent Republican is not in hugely safe ground, but he was, fairly strong. He's supported by the majority right now. And so it's going to be interesting to see from which party young Dean Roy is going to draw. The talk is he will probably draw more from the Democrat Party because it's young people, most of which lean socialist. As Winston Churchill used to famously say, when you're 21 and if you're not a socialist, you have no heart. By the time you're 30, if you're not a conservative, you have no brain. You can decide whether that's true or not. So watch what's going to develop there on the culture front with Dean Roy, 14 years old. Also on culture, what's really moving in terms of capturing people's attention, if you're not familiar with the term, romantasy. Romantasy, this is romance novels that are steeped in fantasy. Yes, there is some sexual side to it, to these novels, but science fiction related stuff, fighting in the underground, women warriors. These books are picking up, and in fact, the one that's really hot right now is called Brimstone. It's really taking off in terms of sales. Important to note that it's a sequel to the book called Quicksilver. That book, when it hit and was ready to be marketed, sold 1 million on Amazon. Huge attraction for romantasies. People who are social commentators are saying the concern they have is that these are intensely escapist, and that's people's right if they want to escape every waking moment by reading Romantasties. That's certainly up to them. But it leads to a real detachment from other issues of life. So here you have, on the one hand, you get a young man like Dean Roy at 14, very much engaged politically, but he's increasingly in the minority as more and more of his generation are looking at ways of escaping and detaching themselves. Hopefully, people will get a bit of a renewed interest in love of other things, like maybe family, like maybe even your country, maybe even things of heaven. Something to think about as you go through the day. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Talk to you tomorrow.